I saw the LinkedIn post before I saw the text. Roland had uploaded it from the airport lounge. A photo of himself, Clifford, and Nolan, standing at a high-top table with champagne flutes raised. Spencer Spear was in the frame too, slightly off to the side, grinning in a jacket that still had the fold lines from the store. The caption read, "Off to Paris with the dream team. Clearbridge is ready to take the next step. Big things coming." 47 likes in the first hour. I stared at that photo for a long time. Spencer Spear, Roland's 26-year-old son, strategy associate, whatever that meant. I had worked alongside that kid for 8 months and I still could not tell you one concrete thing he had delivered. But there he was, champagne in hand, flying first class to Paris for the most important investor meeting in Clearbridge's history. The meeting I had spent 4 months preparing. My name is Walter Holt. I'm 57 years old and I've been operations director at Clearbridge Analytics for 3 years. Clearbridge is a fintech startup out of Chicago, B2B platform for mid-size financial institutions. Good product, real product. I believed in it enough to turn down 2 better-paying offers when Roland recruited me. I told myself that was smart, ground floor opportunity. Get in early, build something, and when the funding came through, you'd be taken care of. The text from Roland came in about 10 minutes after I closed LinkedIn. "Sorry, Walt, budget's tight. Need you to hold down the fort while we're gone. Keep things running smoothly." I read it 4 times. Each time I thought of something I wanted to say back. Each time I put the phone face down on my desk instead. Through the glass wall of my office, I could see the empty desks, the champagne plastic cups from the send-off toast still sitting in the trash by the kitchen. Ellen from accounting had organized it. Little streamers, a handwritten sign that said Paris or bust. Everyone had hugged and taken pictures. I had stood near the back with my coffee and smiled like everything was fine because that's what you do when you've been doing it for 3 years. I pulled up the presentation deck on my laptop, 280 slides, 3 financial models. Every chart, every projection, every talking point built by me across nights and weekends that I'd stopped counting after the first year. The last slide had been finalized at 1:30 in the morning 2 days ago. I had fixed a formatting error in the executive summary at midnight the night before that. Roland had said, "Great job" in a Slack message. This was not how it was supposed to go. Devereaux Capital had been circling Clearbridge for nearly a year. Henry Devereaux ran a $2 billion fund out of Paris, and he did not take meetings with companies he wasn't serious about. His team had first reached out after one of his analysts flagged our operational framework in a report on fintech scaling models. I was the one who responded. I built the detailed briefing packages that kept their interest alive through 6 months of back and forth. Every technical question they sent, I answered. Every data request, I fulfilled. By the time we were scheduling the Paris meeting, Henri's chief of staff, Sylvia, was emailing me directly to coordinate. I was their contact. I was the one who had built the relationship piece by piece over nearly a year. The Paris meeting was always supposed to include 4 people. Roland as CEO, Clifford Nash, our CMO, Nolan Vance, our CTO, and me. Then came the budget conversation. It was a Tuesday morning, 10 days before the trip. Roland called a planning meeting and opened by saying the board was watching our burn rate and we needed to trim travel expenses. I felt my stomach tighten before he even got to the specifics. "Walt," he said, with that look he had, the one that mixed regret and decision in equal parts. "You've done incredible work building this relationship. But for the final push, we need the executive team front and center. Technical strategy is Nolan's territory. Market positioning is Clifford's. And I need to be there as CEO." I finished the sentence in my head. "And you're just operations." What he didn't say in that meeting, what I only found out later, was that the 4th seat wasn't being cut to save money. It was being given to Spencer. Roland had added his son to the manifest quietly. Sometime after that meeting, without telling me or apparently anyone else on the team, the budget wasn't the issue. The seat was always going to be filled, just not by me. The morning they left, I came in early, I set up the conference room, made coffee, laid out printed agendas. I had prepared individual binders for each person on the trip. Roland's had CEO-level talking points and background on each Devereaux partner he'd be meeting. Clifford's had market positioning notes and competitive landscape summaries. Nolan's had technical specs and a Q&A sheet covering every hard question their CTO was likely to ask. Spencer's binder, I noticed later, had been left on the table. Nolan stopped by my office on the way out. "Keep the engine running, Walt." He meant it as a compliment. I nodded and said I would. Roland was on his phone when he passed my door. He pointed at me and gave a thumbs up without breaking his conversation, and then they were gone. I sat in the empty office and did what I always did. I got back to work. There were 3 client emails that needed responses. A server alert that turned out to be nothing, and a compliance question from one of our mid-sized bank clients that technically fell under Nolan's scope, but that Nolan always quietly routed to me anyway. I worked through lunch. I did not check the flight status. I did not look at LinkedIn again. At 6:15 that evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Clifford. Landed safely. Paris is gorgeous. Hotel is perfect. You really outdid yourself with the arrangements. I sent back a thumbs up emoji and closed the message. The walk home took longer than usual. I took the long way around the river. It was a warm evening, people out on the waterfront, and I walked slowly and didn't think about anything in particular. When I got to my apartment, I made dinner, watched about 20 minutes of a game, and then sat at the kitchen table with my laptop open out of habit. That's when the email came in. It was from Henri Devereaux himself, not his assistant, his personal address. Mr. Holt, I'm looking forward to meeting the architect behind your operational framework tomorrow. Your implementation methodology is precisely what convinced my team that ClearBridge has the execution capability to match its vision. He thought I was going to be in that room. No one had told him otherwise. I sat with that email for a long time. The smart move was obvious. Forward it to Roland. Let the team handle it. Go to bed and show up tomorrow and keep being the reliable guy who never made waves. That was the Walter Holt they were counting on. The one who stayed late, fixed the problems, and smiled when they took the credit. I had been that guy for 3 years. I hit reply. I forwarded Henri's original email back to him with one line added at the top. I believe this was intended for me. I won't be in Paris, budget constraints. Walter Holt. I hit send before I could change my mind. Then I closed the laptop and went to bed. Roland called 22 minutes later. Walt, what the hell? Not a question. That particular controlled tone he used when he was furious and trying not to sound it. Devereaux just forwarded your message to me. He's asking why you're not here. I told him the truth. I said, you should have come to me first. You were on a flight. Silence on the line. He's questioning whether the right people are in the room, Roland said. This could sink the whole deal. What did you tell him? That we made difficult budget decisions, but that you'd be available for remote support. A pause. He didn't seem satisfied with that. I wasn't surprised. Henri Devereaux had not built a $2 billion fund by being satisfied with non-answerers. Walt, I need you on a video call tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Paris time. That's 2 a.m. Chicago. 2 in the morning, I'll set my alarm, I said. Roland started to say something else, but I told him I needed to get some sleep and ended the call. I lay in the dark for a while thinking about what I had just done. Not with regret. More like the feeling you get when you finally say out loud something you have been thinking for a long time and realize the world didn't end. I was up at 1:45, made a full pot of coffee, put on a decent button-down shirt. The brick wall behind my desk in the home office made a better background than any conference room, and I had learned that a long time ago. I opened the laptop, pulled up every piece of documentation I had built over the last year for the Devereaux relationship, and spread it across my second monitor. At exactly 2 a.m., the call connected. Henri Devereaux appeared on screen, silver hair, sharp eyes, the kind of face that is seen enough to not be easily impressed. 3 members of his investment team sat beside him with tablets and notepads. The hotel conference room behind them looked expensive and quiet. On the same screen, visible from a second camera angle, I could see Roland, Clifford, and Nolan arranged on one side of a long table. And next to Roland, in a jacket with fold lines still visible at the shoulders, Spencer Spear. Mr. Holt, Henri said, thank you for making time at this hour. I insisted we speak with you directly before proceeding further. For the next 45 minutes, I walked his team through the operational framework from the ground up. When his senior analyst asked about integration challenges with legacy core banking systems, I pulled up documentation I had built 18 months earlier. Migration pathways I had designed after spending 3 weekends studying the client profiles of Devereaux's existing portfolio companies. I had done that on my own time, without being asked, because I thought it might matter someday. It mattered now. When his CTO pressed on scalability limits above 200 concurrent enterprise clients, I answered before Nolan could even lean forward in his chair. Nolan leaned back again, then Henri looked directly at Roland, who built the financial models in the deck. Clifford started to say something about a collaborative process. Henri waited. The silence in that Paris hotel room stretched out. Roland cleared his throat. Walt developed the core models. I see. Henri made a note on the pad in front of him. He looked back at the screen. Mr. Holt, your title is Operations Director. Correct. That's correct. Yet you built the implementation framework. The financial models served as our primary contact for nearly a year and prepared the presentation materials your colleagues are delivering. He paused. Am I characterizing your role accurately? You are. He looked down the table at Spencer, and you are. Spencer shifted in his chair. Spencer Spear, Strategy Associate. What is your contribution to the framework Mr. Holt described? Nobody said anything. Roland opened his mouth. Henry raised one hand slightly, just an inch off the table, and Roland closed it again. The silence went on long enough that it stopped being uncomfortable and became something else entirely. Spencer looked at his notepad. Nolan studied a spot on the wall. "I think I have what I need from this morning," Henry said finally. "Walter, I would like to schedule a separate conversation with you later this week." "My schedule, your convenience." "Of course," I said. After the call ended, I sat at my kitchen table for a few minutes. The coffee had gone cold. Outside, it was still dark and the street was empty. I thought about Roland's face when Henry had asked that question, about the way Spencer had looked at his notepad like he was hoping it would open up and pull him in. I was not happy about what had just happened. That is not the right word for it. It was more like the feeling of watching something that had been off balance for a long time finally settle. I went back to bed. Slept better than I had in months when I woke up at 8. There were 9 texts from Roland and 6 from Clifford. I made fresh coffee and read through all of them before responding to any. Roland, Walt, we need to talk. Roland, call me as soon as you're up. Roland, this is not how team players handle disagreements. Roland, Devereaux is asking questions we weren't prepared for. Roland, Walt, I need to know you're still with us on this. Clifford, what happened in that call? Clifford, Roland is upset. Clifford, just call me back, no judgment. Clifford, Walter, seriously pick up. Clifford, we need to get our story straight before Henry's team follows up. I put the phone down without answering any of them, got dressed, drove to the office. The office was quiet when I got in. A couple of engineers in the back corner, headphones on, doing their thing. Nobody else. I made coffee, sat down at my desk, and opened a SharePoint folder I had created during my first month at Clearbridge and updated quietly ever since. 3 years of documentation, every project I had led, every model I had built, every client I had onboarded. Every deliverable that had gone out under someone else's name or credited to a team that was in most cases just me and an offshore contractor, I had hired and trained myself. Timestamped, organized, cross-referenced against company records. I had told myself I kept it for my own reference, performance review prep, a way to track my own growth, but I think somewhere in the back of my mind, I had always known what it was really for. I just hadn't been ready to use it yet. I spent the morning going through it, not adding anything, just reading, reminding myself of what 3 years of work actually looked like when you laid it out flat. Around noon, my desk phone rang. It was Dina at the front desk. "Walter, there's a woman here asking for you. Says her name is Sylvia Morel from Devereaux Capital." I had not expected that. Sylvia was supposed to be in Paris. "Send her back," I said. She was sharp and direct, maybe late 30s, close-cropped hair, the kind of person who does not waste words. She looked around the office once, briefly, then looked at me. "I hope the unannounced visit is all right," she said. "Henry prefers some conversations happen in person." We walked 2 blocks to a restaurant I had been to once before. Quiet corner table. After we ordered, she got straight to it. Henri had been watching the dynamic in that hotel room carefully, she said. The disconnect between what I had clearly built and where I sat on the org chart had not been lost on him. Neither had Spencer's presence or the silence that followed Henri's question. Then she told me something I had not known. This was not the first time Clearbridge had tried to raise a Series B. Roland had made 3 previous attempts over the past 4 years. Each one had failed. Each one for the same reason. Investors found the technology credible, but didn't believe the leadership team had the operational discipline to scale it. One internal memo from a firm that had passed on the deal 2 years ago had used language that was not gentle about it. My framework had been the piece that finally changed that calculation. Henry's team had flagged it specifically as the reason Devereaux Capital had stayed engaged when others had passed. Roland had known this. He had known it and had never mentioned it to me. Not once, not during any of my reviews where he told me the big payoff was coming once we closed funding. Sylvia slid a card across the table. Portfolio Operations Director, Devereaux Capital. The role would involve working directly with their investment portfolio companies to build and implement operational systems. The salary she mentioned was nearly 3 times what Clearbridge was paying me. "Henry wanted you to have this before your conversation with him," she said. "So you can make whatever decision you make with complete information in front of you." She also handed me an envelope. Inside was a copy of that internal memo from the failed raise 2 years ago. I read it twice. The language was clear. Impressive technology, leadership lacks operational discipline, no credible path to scale. My framework had been the answer to that memo. Roland had used it to finally get a serious investor to the table, and then he had left me in Chicago. I thanked Sylvia, folded the memo back into the envelope, and walked back to the office. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time after dinner. Not angry, exactly. Something quieter than that. I opened a document on my laptop and started typing. Not an email, not a work file. A resignation letter. I was not certain I was going to send it. I think I just needed to know that the option existed. That I was not staying at Clearbridge because I had no other choice, but because I was choosing to, or choosing not to. There is a difference, and it matters more than most people admit. I wrote 3 paragraphs, read them back. They were calm and clear and said everything they needed to say without being bitter about any of it. I saved the document to my desktop, did not send it, closed the laptop, then I opened it again and started building something else entirely. A transition plan, a new org structure, an equity distribution framework, a list of 3 people on the Clearbridge team who had been carrying weight above their titles for at least a year and deserved to be recognized for it. I worked until midnight and then went to bed. The call with Henri was scheduled for 9 a.m. the next morning. I slept fine. When I sat down at my desk the next day and the call connected, Henri was alone. Just him in what looked like a private office. None of the team, none of the hotel conference room formality. He looked like a man who had already made up his mind about a few things and was now filling in the remaining details. "Walter," he said, "I'll be direct with you. I've been doing this for 30 years and I know what I saw in that call 2 days ago. The question I want to ask you is a simple one. Why did you stay at Clearbridge for 3 years in a role that was clearly beneath what you were actually doing?" I didn't have to think about it, because I believed the work mattered more than the credit, I said, and because Roland told me the right moment was coming. I believed him longer than I should have. Henri nodded slowly. That's an honest answer. The startup story, work hard now. Recognition comes later. Sometimes it does. Often it doesn't. I'm realizing that now, I said. Good, he said. Then let's talk about what happens next. Henri laid out 3 options. He said it the way experienced people say difficult things plainly, without softening it into something easier to hear. Option 1. Invest in Clearbridge as currently structured. He said he was increasingly reluctant to do this. The leadership dynamics he had observed did not give him confidence that the company would execute well under pressure. Option 2. Invest with conditions. Specific conditions around leadership restructuring and operational oversight. This option was still on the table, but came with requirements that would significantly change how the company was run. Option 3. Decline to invest in Clearbridge but pursue other opportunities with key talent independently of the company. He looked at me steadily when he said that one. Including me, I said. Precisely. I sat with that for a moment. Then I told him what I actually wanted, not the job at Devereaux Capital, though I was genuinely grateful for it. What I wanted was for the work to survive. I had spent 3 years building something real at Clearbridge, a platform that actually solved a real problem for real clients, and I was not ready to walk away from it just because Roland had treated me badly. The work deserved better than that. The clients we had onboarded deserved continuity. The 2 or 3 people on our team who had been grinding quietly below their titles deserved to see the company make it. Then I'd suggest option 2 is the right path, Henri said. With the right conditions, he told me what those conditions would look like. I would be elevated to COO with a direct reporting line to the board, not to Roland equity package at founding team level, retroactive to my start date. A seat on the advisory board and a right of first refusal clause in the event Roland ever moved to sell the company. There was one more condition. Spencer Spear would need to leave the company. Henry's exact language was elimination of non-merit hires as a precondition of investment. He said it without drama, just a line item in a list of requirements, but we both understood what it meant. Roland would have to push his own son out of the company he had built in order to get the funding that would save it. I had not asked for that. Henry had arrived at it on his own. I will not pretend it didn't land. Is there anything you want me to know before I speak with your team this afternoon? Henry asked. I thought about it. 3 years of nights and weekends. Twice turning down better pay because I believed the promise. My daughter's tuition coming out of a salary that had moved 8% in 36 months while my actual responsibilities had probably tripled. The resignation letter sitting saved on my desktop that I had not sent and might not ever send. Just one thing, I said. Whatever happens with the investment, the platform works, the framework works, the clients we have built relationships with are real, and they are getting real value that deserves to be funded and scaled, regardless of who ends up in which seat. Henri smiled. It was a small smile, but it was a real one. Integrity noted, he said. I'll be in touch with your team shortly. I imagine you'll be hearing from Roland before the end of the day. The call ended at 9:47 a.m. Roland called at 4:15 p.m. He sounded like a different person, not the smooth, confident CEO voice I had been hearing for 3 years. Something flatter, more careful. Henry just finished the meeting with us, he said. How did it go? a pause that went on longer than it needed to. He's conditionally approved the Series B. 14 million. What are the conditions? Roland went through them one at a time: my elevation to COO, the equity package, the board seat, the right of first refusal clause. His voice was even and controlled through all of it. Then he got to the last one. He wants Spencer off the payroll. Roland stopped, started again. His words were non-merit hire elimination, effective before closing. I did not say anything. Clifford is also out. Roland continued. Henry's team asked him to substantiate the customer acquisition projections in the deck. He couldn't produce the underlying data. Clifford submitted his resignation this morning. I had built those projections. Clifford had presented them as the marketing team's work for the better part of 6 months. Walt, Roland said, I need to know if you're staying. I'll give you my answer when you're back in Chicago, I said. We should do this in person. A pause. Fair enough. We land Thursday morning. After I hung up, I sat at my desk for a while. The office was mostly empty by then, just the hum of the HVAC and the distant sound of the engineers wrapping up in the back. I opened my laptop and looked at the resignation letter I had written 2 nights ago, read it through once. Then I closed it without changing anything and opened the transition plan document instead. I worked until 7 printed 3 copies of the full packet, labeled each one. Set them in a neat stack on the corner of my desk where I would see them first thing in the morning. Then I went home, made dinner, and watched the end of a game I had missed earlier in the week. I did not check my phone after 9. I slept without any trouble at all. Thursday morning, I got to the office at 7:30, made coffee, set the 3 folders on the conference room table before anyone else arrived. 1 for Roland, 1 for Nolan, 1 for the board representative joining by video. I sat at the head of the table and waited. They landed back in Chicago on a Thursday morning. I was already in the conference room when Roland, Nolan, and Spencer walked through the door. Spencer had his rolling carry-on and was looking at his phone. When he saw me at the head of the table, he stopped. I nodded at him. He nodded back. There was nothing else to say between us, and we both knew it. Roland sat down. Nolan sat down. Spencer set his bag by the wall and took the chair furthest from the table like he already understood he was not part of this meeting. I had placed 3 folders on the table, 1 for Roland, 1 for Nolan, 1 for the board representative joining by video in 10 minutes. I had printed everything cleanly, labeled everything clearly, and organized it the way I organize everything, which is to say, the way that makes it impossible to misunderstand. Roland picked up his folder and opened it. He read the first page without speaking, then the second. Nolan flipped through his copy. Neither of them said anything for a while. This is thorough, Roland said finally. I've had 3 years to think about what this company needs, I said. The difference is now someone's listening. The board representative joined the video call. We walked through the transition plan page by page. New org structure with clear reporting lines. COO role with full operational authority and a direct board relationship. Equity distribution that reflected actual contribution going back to year 1. Promotion recommendations for 3 people on the team who had been doing senior level work under junior level titles. A 90-day operational roadmap for deploying the Series B capital efficiently. Roland asked 2 questions. Both were good questions. I had answers for both of them because I had anticipated them 2 days ago when I was building the plan. Nolan didn't say much. He had always been more comfortable with systems than with people, and I think he understood that the new structure worked in his favor too. He was a strong technologist. He just needed to be pointed at the right problems by someone who understood the full picture. That was going to be me now. When we finished, Roland looked at me across the table. If we sign this, you stay. I stay, I said, and we build what this company was always supposed to be. He extended his hand. I shook it. Spencer left the office that afternoon. No announcement, no going away anything. He had a bag. He had his phone, and then he was gone. I heard later he landed at a smaller advisory firm where by all accounts the work suited him better. I wished him nothing bad. That had never been the point. Clifford's replacement came on board 3 weeks later. New CMO, sharp and grounded, the kind of person who asks where the numbers came from before she puts them in a slide. She and I got along well from the first week. The Series B closed 6 weeks after the Paris trip, $14 million, clean term sheet, no surprises. The 3 people I had flagged in the transition plan got their promotions within the first month. A senior data analyst who had been doing principal level work for 2 years. A client success manager who had been running implementations that should have had a director title attached to them. An engineer on the platform team who had been solving architecture problems that Nolan used to take credit for in executive meetings. All 3 of them got new titles, new compensation, and for the first time, an actual seat at the table when decisions were being made. At our first all-hands meeting after the restructuring, I stood at the front of the room and walked the team through the new operational plan. what we were building, how we were going to build it, who was responsible for what and why. No vague promises about the future, just a clear picture of the work and the people doing it. Roland sat in the back row. He listened the whole way through. 2 months in, our delivery efficiency was up 22%. Client satisfaction scores had moved in the right direction for the first time in a year. We had 3 new enterprise prospects in the pipeline, 2 of which had come through referrals from existing clients who were finally getting the implementation support they had been promised. On my desk, there was a small package that had arrived from Paris the week after the term sheet closed, a Mont Blanc pen and a card from Henri Devereaux. The note said, "The best moves are the ones that look quiet from the outside." I kept the pen. I kept the card. I thought about that line a lot in the months that followed. I had not blown anything up. I had not threatened anyone, or made demands, or gone over anyone's head in a way that was loud or dramatic. I had forwarded 1 email, told the truth on a video call at 2 in the morning, and let 3 years of documented work speak for itself. That was all it took. Not because the world is fair, but because sometimes the right person is paying attention at the right moment and they know what they are looking at. If you're reading this and something about it sounds familiar, I want to say this directly to you. If you have spent years being the person who actually runs things while someone else gets on the plane, you already know what I'm talking about. That feeling of doing the work and watching others take the room. It is not a small thing, and you're not wrong to be tired of it. Most men I know who are my age have swallowed that feeling more times than they can count because they told themselves it was just how things worked. It does not have to work that way. The leverage you have built is real. The documentation, the relationships, the institutional knowledge that only exists because you put it there. That is yours. Nobody gets on a plane to Paris and takes it with them. Start keeping better records. Know what you have built. And when the right moment comes, and it will come, do not hesitate. 1 email was all it took.